All right, chem students, today we have a setup where we have, as you can see, we have our Bunsen burner going with the gas. We've been really careful with that, obviously. We have a ring stand, a clay triangle set nicely in the middle of that, and then we have a watch glass we're going to use. So first thing I want to do, I have some cetyl alcohol, and we want to put a couple of scoops of that onto the watch glass. So there's just a pile of it there. Put that in the middle of the ring stand. And then we're going to bring the heat underneath and we'll see what happens. So hopefully you can see that cetyl alcohol is turning to kind of a liquid. And I would say, so we don't cause, I'd say we are completely liquefied there. It's no longer a solid.
All right, so for our next experiment, we're actually going to be looking at just adding a little bit of water to two separate beakers. And so we're going to fill both of our beakers about half full with some water here. And then we're just going to add food coloring to the beakers. So for our first beaker, we're just going to add a couple drops of blue food coloring. And we'll kind of swirl it around a little bit. Really get it spread out throughout the beaker. And then in our second beaker, we're just going to add a little bit of red food coloring. And so same thing, we'll just add a couple drops of red, swirl it around a little bit, get that food coloring spread out throughout. All right, so that's the first part of this. And so now you want to record some observations. And then for part two, we're actually going to mix our two beakers together. And so we'll kind of carefully pour this in here. And you can kind of see it, but there's our final change. So go ahead and think about whether it's a physical or chemical change. Now for what it's worth, in case it's hard to see, this is in fact a shade of purple. Otherwise, go ahead and record your observations in your data table. Go.
All right, here we go with our next experiment. What we have is some sodium bicarbonate, commonly known in your house as baking soda, vinegar. I have a flask, a graduated cylinder, and a scoopula. So I'm going to start by putting a full scoopula of sodium bicarbonate into the flask. And then I'm going to measure out 5 milliliters of the vinegar. Oops, I went a little over. There we go. So that's 5 milliliters. And I'm just going to add that to the sodium bicarbonate. We'll see what happens. Whoa. Hopefully you can see that is a whole lot of fizzing going on, a lot of bubbles. I'm going to get a stirring rod, give that a little stir. you were here with me, you'd be smelling some vinegar. All right, so you want to record those observations.
So for this experiment, we're actually going to be doing kind of a combination or a mixture of two different things. So for this, we're going to be mixing together potassium iodide, and the other thing that we're going to be mixing is lead to nitrate. Now for this, we're going to be mixing them together in a test tube. Now I'll first start off with the potassium iodide, and so we'll put some drops into our test tube here. And we'll put a decent amount so it's pretty easy to see. But now that we have our drops of potassium iodide in there, notice it's colorless still. So that's an important point. Now let's do our lead to nitrate. And so for our lead to nitrate, we're just gonna add it a small amount, just kind of drop by drop here. So I'm gonna hold it up to the camera so you guys can see, but here we go. Whoa. So look at that. We got this yellow substance here, and I know it might be kind of hard to see, so let's turn the camera around. And so here, after we turn the camera around, you guys can kind of see that it's very cloudy. Now the other thing that I want you guys to look at is look at on the back side of the glass. So if you look really closely, you can actually see that it's specks. So remember, if it's specks, that means we formed something special here.
All right, for our next experiment, we have just a nice size, a 250 milliliter flask and some bromothymol blue. It's an indicator. So we're going to start by adding very carefully just 5 drops of the bromothymol. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, just a little bit there in the bottom. And then I'm going to fill this up to about 1/4 or 50 milliliters. Got to be really careful because these faucets come fast and furious. And now it's just a real light shade of blue in there. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to blow into it as best I can for about 2 minutes or until we see a change. So it's basically kind of a light green to almost clear now. Maybe yellowish. Hard to tell with the straw, yellow straw in there.
All right, so for our next kind of experiment here, it's pretty simple overall. It just involves a couple things. And so the first thing is copper 2 chloride. And so for our copper 2 chloride, we're just going to take a scoop of it and add it to our beaker here. And so we don't need a big scoop, but we'll put just a little bit in there. Now, after this, our next step is to actually add water so the beaker is about half full. So add in some water. Now notice, I know it might be kind of hard to see, but we got this nice blue solution. Now there's still some of it that's not dissolved yet. So we're going to do a quick stir to try and get it fully dissolved. And so as we do that, we can start to see that that blue color comes through a little bit more. But let's just make it a little bit darker. So we'll add just a little bit more of our copper chloride to our beaker here. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll stir it around, make sure that it gets nice and dissolved. Now, after this, the only other part of this experiment is to actually just go through and add some pieces of aluminum foil to kind of see what happens. And so for this, we almost got all of our copper chloride dissolved. All right, now we just have our sheet of aluminum foil. And let's actually just take a second and let's get a different look at it. So here it is, our crumpled up aluminum foil piece with our copper chloride. We'll drop it in. Not very exciting yet. Let's kind of poke it. Maybe that'll help kickstart the reaction here. Oh, there we go. Now we can start to see that it's reacting. So here, you can actually see that it's smoking, it's fizzing. Smoking a lot and fizzing. And just in case you guys are wondering, we saw that it was smoking a lot, it was fizzing a lot. Let's just take a quick temperature reading. And it actually rose in temperature by almost twice. It looked like it had a peak there of just under 40, so it's 35 degrees Celsius now. And for what it's worth, I know you guys may not believe me, but it was just room temperature water, so it would have started around 22. But it definitely
All right, now we have a strip of magnesium. It's just bendable metal strip. We call it a ribbon. And we have our Bunsen burner. I'm just going to try and get this to ignite. When you're doing this in class, sometimes it takes some patience. I'm going to get that into the Bunsen burner, right into the tip of that cone. Oh, look at that. That is an amazingly bright white light.